Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. So today we will continue from where we had left yesterday. That is dealing with terrain and topography. So today we will try some advanced tools, how we can work on different terrains and how to modify terrains, how to add details, place buildings, and adding roads and trees and all sorts of other techniques to deal with terrain. So here we have the terrain which we had created yesterday. So using the Topo Shaper tool, right? So we have got the other layers as well. So let me turn everything on, and you can see that we have the trees and we have the roads and the buildings as well, all placed at the bottom, right? So let's go inside and bring them all upwards. I'm going to bring them all up because let's turn off the contour. We need to turn the contours off by, I think the contour got moved to another layer since we did a simplify contour. So let me select the contours again. I'm going to do a selection so that I don't select the objects at the bottom, okay, and move them all to the contours layer. All the contour lines are now moved to the contours layer, right? And even the terrain, I will move it to the contours layer so that I can hide them, right? Okay, so we have got the rest of the objects now. Now let's start with adding the road. Yes, so this is the road. Now, as you had expected, that the road is also broken down into various small lines. That's because it was a curved line and it got imported from AutoCAD, right? So let's first bring it upward, okay, so that we can see it even if we turn the terrain on. So you can place it at any height. So we will be doing the super well here. We can also go ahead with the simplify contour tools. So let's simplify contour only. 5. Okay. Now we have connected all the points into a single curve, right? Now we need to create a face in order to place it on the contour. So we know that we can create a face by drawing a line here, or we can also think we can draw a line from this endpoint to the other endpoint. Okay, now we have got the face, right? So once we have the face, we can use a tool from the sandbox toolbar, which is called the stamp tool. Okay, so we can click on the stamp tool, and next time we need to select the terrain where we need to place the road. Okay, so I'm going to select the terrain. Make sure you select terrain, not the contour lines. Click on it. It is going to process for some time, and now we have got some elevation, and you can see that the road is now placed and projected along the contour. Okay, so I have made sure that it is projected vertically upwards, and I don't change the location of the road, and we will place it at the location where we find that it is an appropriate cut and fill, and we can have the road like this. Okay, so let's add a color so that we can distinguish it. Okay, thus we have the road along the contour, running along the contour, projected from this curve. Okay, So we can either get rid of this, or we can put it in the road layer and turn the road layer off. Now let's add the trees. Okay, so again I'm going to select the trees. Now in order to select the trees, I am going to right click and select all instances, all active instances for one type. Or in fact, we can also turn off the buildings and keep only the vegetation on and select all the vegetations. Okay, we need to move it upward so that we can see where we are placing the trees. And let's turn on the contours. Again, I have moved it vertically upwards along the blue axis so that they all get placed in the right location only. Okay, so for this one, we have got three different types of trees. One is this type, the other one is this one, and the third one is a smaller tree, right? So we will be replacing these 2D symbols with 3D trees. Okay, so for that we need to have a 3D component first, right? So we will be going and let's search for a 3D tree. Now I prefer to use low poly trees. That means trees that have low polygons, but still they look better. So let's search for low poly. Since we have so many trees here in this particular scene, so we will try to import trees that are not heavy. Let's go with, let's see this collection. We have a 3D low poly tree, and okay, I think this will do. Let's move it and place it at the center of one of the three components. Okay, and I will scale it properly so that it matches the diameter of the canopy. Let's place the center of the tree roughly along this center. Okay, now we have got two options. We can, once this is placed, we can cut this object by Ctrl X, go inside the same component where we had placed and aligned it, and paste it in place. For pasting in place, I am using the shortcut Ctrl Shift V. Now you can see that the object is now placed, and since all the blocks from CAD were imported as components, so all those components, all those instances got replaced because we modified one of the components, right? And now we can get rid of all of these 2D objects. So that is one way to do this. The other way will be, I will place another tree. Let's pick up this tree and place it here. Place it for this component. Okay. Now the other way to do is, again, it's also the same process, but we are going to make use of an extension. Now for that, you need to check inside the component whether the axis of the tree is placed at the center of the component, of this component which we had imported. So if this is placed properly, only then this technique or this trick is going to work. Okay. So even for the other component, we need to check whether the axis is properly placed. Okay, so axis needs to be at the center and at the bottom of the trunk. Okay, so now I'm going to select, I'm going to go and select a tool from the JHS power bar, which is called Compo Swapper. Compo Swapper. Okay, so I'll click this. Now at the bottom, I can see that we have an option saying press Alt to select source component. So the source component will be the 3D tree. So I'll hold Alt and pick the source component. Source component is now selected. Now I can click on another component and that component will be replaced. Okay, so I can go ahead and click one component at a time, or I can replace all the instances of that particular component by holding the control key. So control and click, all the instances of that component will be replaced. Okay, so you can try out both the techniques and replace your 2D tree with a 3D tree. So let's have another one for this tree. We need a smaller tree. I think this will work. Okay. Let's place it at the center. This at the center of, almost roughly the center of the trunk. For compost wrapper, we may not place it at the center also, because we only need to check the center of that axis. And again, I'm going to pick on the compost wrapper and hold Alt to pick the source. Once the source is selected, once we have the source, we can hold the control and click on this to replace all the instances. I think this particular file which we had just imported is not so smaller. It's not that smaller in size. It's taking some time to replace. So I think it will get replaced eventually. So be careful while importing models from the component window or the 3D warehouse. Sometimes we accidentally import a very heavy file and we will get stuck like this. So we have another, I have got another file open. Let's go ahead with that one, where we have these contour lines. It is a smaller file, so it should be easier. Let's select all the contour lines and quickly create our terrain. Firstly, I will go with simplify contours and 5 degree, enter. Must select all the contours again, go to topo shaper, calculate, generate terrain, click outside. Now we have these. Now let's select all the trees, and in fact I will select everything that's at the bottom. Move them upwards. I'm going to place a smaller tree this time. Go to component, search for low poly tree. Yes. Now, if we import these kind of trees where we have an additional object, we must we must delete everything that is not important and move the tree to the origin of that particular component and close it. Now let's swap the components. Compost wrapper, pick the source, compost wrapper, hold Alt to pick the source, and control and click on this to replace. We may have two objects here. Okay, thus we have all the trees placed. Now let's select the trees. Let's select all the trees. I'm going to go to select, instances, and select all active. That way I can quickly select all the trees, right? And we need to place the trees along the contour, right? So for that, I'm going to click on drop at intersection from the JHS power bar, and if we click this one once, then immediately we can place all the trees on the contours. You can see that we had placed the trees along the slope, and wherever the bottom of the tree got connected with the terrain, the tree got placed there, and that depends on how the axis is placed. If the axis was placed somewhere in the center of the height, then half of the tree would have been submerged inside the terrain. So that's why placing the axis at the right location is very important. Okay, so that is how we place trees along contours, and we can do that quite quickly as well. Now, next up, we have if we have some buildings. Let's assume that we have few buildings here. Now, let's say some random shapes. I'm going to click some buildings and make them as solid block using the joint push pull, and give it a height of 3 meters. Okay, so now each block will be created as a group or a component. Okay, I will show you why we need to do this. So now we have all the buildings as individual groups. Okay, so same, we need to place it properly. So let's assume that we have the location of the buildings from our reference files or from the survey drawing. Now let's place them along the contour. Okay, there might be other instances also for the buildings. Let's say we have another few set of buildings placed here. Okay, so let's select all the buildings again, and we are going to use the same drop tool, but let's check whether they have got the center at the lowest level. We can see that the center is at the lowest level. So by default, center will be at the lowest level only, unless you edit the component and move it inside the component editor, then you will find these kind of errors. Now let's keep this one like this so that you can understand what I mean by if the axis is not in a proper location. Let's have this like this so that we remember these two have got the axis on a different place. Now let's select them all again, click on drop at intersection, and all the objects have been dropped. Now this one has got some error because we had the axis at the wrong location, and even if we try to drop, it will have some error, right? It is dropping, but it is not going at the lower level, right? And this will be elevated because its axis has already touched the ground, right? Now even other buildings might be floating. That's because we know that only the axis will be touching, right? So all the other part of the buildings are not going to meet the ground, right? So you can use this technique if you just need to populate the site with a number of buildings. But if you need to do a detailed placement of a building, then there is a different way to do that. So for that, I'm going to take this building as a reference, and we will place this building on our terrain. Okay. So for that, I'm going to select the building, and again, as shown last time, for the road, we will pick the stamp tool from here, and I'll show you what this red lines means. So that's the offset from the building along which it will create a gradient. So I'll show you once it is complete. So let's click on the terrain. Now again, it is going to create an elevated object. I mean, it is going to create a flat surface now, and we are going to place it so that we have the appropriate cut and fill. And even once it is fixed, you can go ahead and move the level up and down so that you get the right level. And after that, we can move the object and place it on the terrain. Now you can see that we had placed the building in a much more better way, and the offset means from here we had started our cut and fill, right? So this is the offset. Now we can also change the offset if you want to. Let's place another building. Let's pick this building and click on the stamp tool. This time I'm going to reduce the offset to say 200. And there's the building. I think it didn't take the new value. Let's pick smooth. Now it will take 200, as you can see. You can place the building like this, and now we can drop it, or we can manually move it and place it at one of the corner. Okay. So if you want, you can do this for all the buildings, and if not, then you can just place them and just to populate the buildings, the context, that is. Now you need to be very careful while using the stamp tool. There are few limitations, and as well as there are some troubles that you may come across. Firstly, stamp tool will work only if you place, only if the building has a single flat surface. Okay, that means if the building has two different levels, let's say we have the building like this. So if we try to place this building here, stamp tool will only pick one surface, and it will only level out at a single level. Okay, so if I select the building and pick the stamp tool, so you can see that now it is only picking the lower level. The upper level is not taken care of, right? So, and if we pick the terrain, I can see that only one face is working with this. But you can, of course, work around with this. You can do the stamp tool for two different groups, two different objects. Like, let's divide this into two objects. We can certainly have two objects, right? So let's say this is one object, and we can do the stamp tool with that. And we can also pick the other object. Now let's adjust them. We can adjust it later also once we have placed our building. So once we have placed the building, we can see that we need to adjust this level. Let's pick up J, and so that we can select this, move this face to the lower level, J, and move it to the bottom. Now there are some points, because we had some overlaps because of the offsets, that can be taken care of, but I will also show you different ways how you can achieve a better result than using the stamp tool. Now this is one of the limitations, and this is how you can overcome that limitation. And secondly, the issue with stamp tool is that we are now using only simple faces, simple geometry, which is only a cuboid. Now, if we had, say, a detail model with all the wall thicknesses and internal divisions and even furniture, okay, so in that case, if you try to create a stamp tool with that model, your stamp may never get carried out. Okay, that means you will get errors and SketchUp may hang and close down. So even if we have a detail model, it is recommended that you only use a simple geometry, like you can just trace the outline of the floor that is going to floor or the slab that is going to be connected with the object, that is going to be connected with the terrain. You just pick that face, because we only need a face to carry on with the stamp tool. Okay, so just create the face, don't pick up the detail model, click the face and then carry out the stamp tool. So in that way you will get the result in a much faster way, and you will not hang, you will not break down SketchUp's interface, and you can get rid of this later on. And next, place the building here. So those are two tips for using the stamp tool. I'm going to show you more ways how you can place buildings on a terrain, even if you have multiple levels. Let's say we have more than one levels, more than two levels in fact. Okay, and we need to place the building like this one. Okay, so for now, this building, I think we did the slope on the wrong direction. Let's divide this equally into three parts. Copy this to the other edge, divide it by 3. Okay. This will go to this level, this will go to this level, something in between. Okay. Now we will be creating the impression for these faces on the terrain. Okay. So for that we need to have the faces available to us so that we can select. So I have copied the faces and pasted it outside. To show you, we have the faces like this. Okay. Now I'm going to use another option from the sandbox, which is called the drape. Okay, so we can pick all three of them together and pick on the drape tool and select the terrain. Now what drape tool does is it will project an impression of the lines present on this and project it vertically downwards on the terrain. Okay, so if we had other lines also as well, then those lines would also have been projected. Okay, so let me just demonstrate this. So all those lines which are in any flat geometry or the face which we select will be projected down, and we can have those lines on our curved terrain, right? So let's create the projection on the terrain using the drape tool. So we have the projections here, right? Now, and once we go inside our terrain, you can see that these faces are now isolated, right? As we do in case of single face. Even though they are made of so many numerous faces, if we hide those faces, we can select one face at a time. Now we can do a push-pull, right? But SketchUp native push pull won't allow this kind of push pull, right? So for that, we can select the face, go to join push pull, and make sure this time we pick this option and not this one, because we don't need the original face to be placed here. So we will select this. We can push it upward or downward. Now you can see that it is push pulling, and it is also changing in size, right? So we don't want this kind of effect. We want to have an effect we had in case of the stamp tool, right? So for that, we have to turn on some changes. We are not going to use this push pull. Okay, so for that will be using another tool from the join push pull menu, which is called the vector push pull. Okay, so what vector push pull does is it will give us a push pull with a flat plane on the top. Okay, so make sure again, don't use this option, use this one. And if you don't see these additional options, then you need to turn on the more option from here. And let's do a push pull this time, and we need to push pull this with a direction. So our direction here will be vertically upward or downward. So let's leave it here. And I'm going to repeat this to this plane as well. Repeat this to this plane. And we have some missing faces. We can fix that. And even if we don't, it will not be visible anyway. Now we can place our object at the location, but in case the levels are still not matched, then we can also move it upward, or we can even continue with the join push pull. Move it upward and place it, and thus we have the terrain to match with the building surface. And you can even create steps along terrain using the join push pull tool. This same tool, you can create boundary walls, and many other windows get open once you get used to join push pull and also the vector push pull. Okay. So is this clear till now? I'm going to go a little bit further from here using the join push pull and creating shapes on terrain and modifying them. So I hope you understood how we can modify the terrain using the drape tool. We projected the lines, and once we get shapes, we can use the join push pull to create the levels we need, right? So in case we don't have any shape and we need to create shape along the curve or the terrain itself. Okay, so how can we do that? So let's try and draw a boundary wall for this building. So we cannot draw a boundary wall, because if we draw a line, so that line has got straight through the terrain, right? Because of the undulation on the terrain, right? So for that, we have an extension called tools on surface. So we have the extension called tools on surface. Now again, it's a very powerful tool. You can draw any shape available here, any regular shape or irregular shape or even curved shape, using the tools on surface on any irregular surfaces. Okay, so let's draw a line. I'm going to pick this one. We can draw a line. Okay, make sure none of these are on, and this option is turned on. Okay, only then we will be able to draw lines. So I'm going to try to draw a line from this point to this point, and pick another point somewhere here, another point somewhere here, and close it back to this. let's finish it. Now you can see that we had specified 4 corners, but we had got the line along the curved surface, right? As you can see. And it's not limited to lines. You can draw rectangles, circles, and you can also create offsets. So we have offset. You can draw freehand tools as well. So we also have the offset tool. So we all know that it's not possible to create offset on multiple faces, but we have here, we can create offset along the surface as well. So let's create a boundary wall of 300 thickness. We have the boundary wall placed. Now I'm going to select the wall and go with vector push pull and give it a height. Let's start with this height first. Now we need to provide some more height value here. So we have this height, and I can create divisions in between, like here. And again, if we go to it, vector push pull, go below that level, and again create divisions where we want to have change the level of the walls. And go on adjusting and create our boundary wall. Now, vector push pull can get really messy if you don't understand how to provide the direction for this. That means if you select the vector push pull, select a face and vector push pull, and if you don't provide the direction in a proper way, the push pull will be created, but you will get some kind of results like this. Okay, so make sure you select and provide the direction in the right way, and thus we can go on adding more divisions and details and create your boundary wall and as many levels as you want on the terrain. We should have created the boundary wall as a separate group instead of having it as a part of the terrain. And similar way, you can create steps. You can create n number of different levels using joint push pull. So let's see what all options we have for the tools on surface. Now, for the tools on surface to work, make sure you are inside the terrain geometry and not selecting the terrain as a group. You don't have to select the surface. You can go outside, or you can deselect also, but you need to be at the innermost level so that you can draw on the surface directly. Okay, so we have the circle tool, we have polygon tools. You can draw the circle. So thus we have this circle. Then we have polygon, we have ellipse, parallelogram, circle, and we can draw offset for any shape as well. Select a face and draw an offset, and we will have a circular pond. This can be our circular pond, right? So play around with the tools available on the tools on surface, and try to create different geometries on surfaces, on any kind of irregular shape. You can draw using the tools, on these tools. Okay, so let me quickly demonstrate few more tricks to work with terrain, and I will also introduce you with few more additional extensions. I hope you all are taking a note of all the extensions that we had covered till now, because there are quite a few extensions we are still going to cover. Okay, so let's say we need to create mounts along these green areas. Okay, so to create mounts, we need to select the edges of the boundary where we need to create mount. So for that I had double clicked and deselected the face, and we need to make use of another extension called soap bubble, which is this one, soap bubble. And first thing we need to do, it's a two-step process basically. First step will be to create a skin, and second thing is to create the bubble. Okay, so we will create the skin, which looks like this, and we can increase the number of divisions as well. Okay, so I'm going to type in, increase the division to 20, let's say, and enter. Make sure you type in enter to complete the command. And now we have completed the command, and we need to select the newly created skin. Okay, so we have this skin, and then run the bubble command. So for the bubble, I'm going to apply a pressure. Now we can see that the newly created bubble has got the negative face facing outside, right? So we need to apply a negative pressure. So I will demonstrate it again so that you will be able to understand in a better way. So I'm going to type in minus 10, enter, minus 10, enter. Okay, now we have the bubble, but it is way too much. So minus 5, it's still too much, minus 3. Okay, this looks good. So I'm going to complete the command now. So let's see what's happening there. We have, we can get rid of the face. We have this border. Okay, so it can be of any shape. Here we had created a skin. So skin can be of any division. So don't go overboard with it. Type in a division not higher than 40. Okay, so we have 10 divisions. We will end the command by pressing enter. Okay, now we have selected the skin. Click on the bubble. Okay, and again we have the negative face upward and the positive face downward, right? So in order to create the bubble along the negative face, so I'm going to type in the negative pressure, negative 10, enter. The pressure will inflate the bubble, right? So we have the mound kind of effect here. Now we can smoothen this further, right? So we can go to soften edges and soften the edge of the bubble, right? So it's not limited to a single face. It's not limited to a plain geometry. You can also create bubble in case you have geometries, skin, which are not on a single plane. So we have this geometry which is not on a single plane. So I have got the outer border. So we can select the border by double clicking. So this is the border. And select all the edges, then we can click on the skin. We have got the skin created, default 10 divisions. I'm okay with that. Press enter, and you can see that the skin has adjusted itself to the edges which we had selected. And once we complete the tool and pick the skin, we can apply the bulb as well. So I don't know whether it's a positive value or a negative value. Let's type in a positive value first, 5. So I think the face was a negative one, so minus 5. We'll create a positive, minus 8, amount like this. So there are more uses of the skin tool. I will demonstrate it later on, but let's quickly see how we can also create mounts along few surfaces, by creating the exterior profile only. So let's assume that we need to create a mount along along the wall. Okay, so I'm going to create a few arcs, just like this, and close it here. We need to close the shape in order to get a profile. So we have this one, and let's close it as an arc from here to here. Okay, we had got the profile, but on this side, the profile will be defined by the edge of the pathway. So we need to pick the edge of the pathway and bring it outside. Control Shift V. Now we have got the profile selected. Let me show you by moving it upward a little bit. You can see the profile is like this. And we can create the skin. And I think we need to increase the value. Let's increase it to 15 and press enter. And we have the skin like this, right? And we can also increase the bubble to, let's say, 3 minus 5. And if we need the mount, we can get the mount like this. So I hope this is clear with all of you. Let's pick up a color from here and edit this.
We cannot reverse the face in this case.
We can reverse the face. I didn't reverse it because these were all individual faces, right? So we can do that, but for that, let's first soften it so that we can select them as a single face, and we can reverse it. And now also we can apply the bubble. We can change it to, let's say, -6. This time it is going downwards because now we had reversed the face, right? Positive face.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I think that will be all for today. We had covered creating trees by swapping the components and also replacing the components. We have seen two different techniques. Then adding buildings, adding roads, dropping buildings, and placing a building more accurately using the stamp tool as well as the join push pull tool. Then creating mounts using the soap skin bubble tool. Then we had also learned about the tools on surface, using which you can draw any shape on irregular surfaces, and we can modify those shapes with the help of the join push pull to create steps as well as to create multiple levels. And we had also covered creating slopes and mounts along irregular shapes, like along the curved geometry as well. Okay, so we will be dealing with terrain a lot in our future as well, but for that only you need to understand these tools, basic tools. Once you get your hands on these tools, you will be able to modify any kind of terrains, work with any contoured geometry or irregular geometry, and you can place your buildings over there. And I am sure you will be very confident to work with any irregular shape as well. So that will be all. So if you have anything to ask, please do ask, and please practice